Alright, welcome back to Life It with DVD. Thanks for being here. Today I wanted to talk about the unlit path, I will call it, and why you can't know yourself without looking at your darkness, the parts of you that you maybe wish weren't around, right? Um, so, we spend our lives building an identity, right? A successful one, a spiritual one, a tough one, right? The nice one. We polish this persona that we have and present it to the world, and we hope that it'll finally make us feel like we have some place in it, right? That we'll feel secure, loved, whole. But then someone, right, disagrees with us, or we fail at something, and there's this intense irrational reaction that erupts. So where does that come from? That reaction is, a crack in this persona that we have built. And it's a signal that your identity, or the identity that you think you have, is actually an identity of performing, and is not your true unintegrated self. So today we're looking at talking about the non-negotiable path to real freedom, and turning away from that mirror of the world and walking into the darkness within, to find the missing pieces of ourselves. So really, there's a fortress of identity that we have. This is the protector, our ultimate prison that is very hard to see. So why do we build an identity, right? In childhood, parts of us that were deemed unacceptable, anger, neediness, vulnerability, selfishness, these things to feel safe and to get love, we walled these parts off and constructed a personality that would be approved of, that would be accepted. And this is ultimately a brilliant survival mechanism. But there's also, right, this identity can be fragile, right? It requires constant validation. There's a need to be right. When someone disagrees with us or challenges our worldview, right, it doesn't feel like a simple difference of opinion. It can feel like an existential threat to our very foundation of safety. And that's why we argue. That's why we defend. And we need somebody else to be wrong, and we need to be right to prop up this persona, or what we think about as an identity of ourself. So some people even point to the world's corruption and the institutions in it, and say it's far easier. Well, it's far easier to point to the darkness out there, the things that we can't control. These corrupt politicians, a toxic ex, the flawed system, the broken system, right? It's easier to point to these things than to confront the darkness that's inside of yourself. And when you point one figure outward, three point back at you. The traits that you most despise in others are often the very ones that you have disowned within yourself. And it's not to say that, oh yes, like go out and be a corrupt politician or a bad person, but the way we look at it is as black and white. Oh, this is good and this is bad. And it's not that simple. So there's basically ghosts in the machine of our programming here, right? They're triggers. These intense, disproportionate emotional reactions that we have are not random. They're the precise indicators pointing directly to an unhealed part of ourselves. This feeling of maybe being unseen or ignored, right? That can point to childhood where your emotional needs were neglected. If you have this feeling of abandonment, right? That can point to a early experience, real or perceived, of abandonment. maybe emotional, maybe physical, could be on different levels. Um, if you have an overwhelming fear of being right or needing to be right, this can point to an environment where being wrong was punished, with shame or guilt, and maybe a withdrawal of love. So the question to ask here is, what happens to me when I'm tired, hungry, under pressure, criticized? Who do I become? Right? That is not usually the real you. That is an unintegrated shadow part of yourself that's often taking the wheel there. So that part of you is still wounded. It's still scared. It's still running a childhood program that ultimately your unconscious patterns are, maybe doing something to cope with that. And that's allowing that darkness to come out. So how do we integrate the shadow part, right? This is not about blaming your parents, right? I mean, you can blame them, but ultimately it's fruitless, because if they had done it to you, then chances are something similar happened to them. So hey, we're all kind of victims in that sense. But it's not about wallowing in the pain, right? It's about liberating ourselves through awareness and responsibility. So step one, identify the pattern, right? And the trigger that you may be experiencing. We all have them. We all have them. We all have work to do. So the next time you have a strong reaction, pause, ask, what exactly am I feeling here? And what does this remind me of from my past? You might say, a boss criticized me and I felt, undervalued or shame. This feels exactly like when my father would say, nothing I did was good enough, and constantly critiquing you. So identify that pattern. Step two is to invite the shadow in with compassion. So instead of judging the reaction that you feel, the feeling, whoa, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Whatever, why am I so sensitive? Approach it with curiosity. Talk to that young part of yourself, that child part. I see you, right? I feel how scared you are, of being rejected here. It makes sense that you feel that way, right? You had to do it in the past to survive, given what you went through. But hey, you're in a different time and place right now. You're safe here. You're safe with me, with us, right? With yourself. And you have to reparent yourself in that sense. Or it doesn't even have to be reparenting, but you just have to work with that part of you that is feeling, all that sort of turbulence. So give to them what you needed back then. So that wounded part is, frozen in time, still seeking permission, safety, and love. You as the adult get to give it to them. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to be judged, right? You can love yourself no matter what happens. And that can be a hard thing for people, right? There's a lot of judgment that people have towards themselves, and they don't even realize it, because it is that unconscious programming. So you have to say to yourself, maybe say it in the mirror, right? Like, I will not abandon you. Your anger is allowed, right? It's valid. Your experience is validated. And once you've heard and integrated, this new message to yourself, when you feel these triggers, it loses its power. And then you can finally respond to the present situation consciously by responding in the moment rather than reacting from some old painful past. So the result here is from, performance to presence. You need to stop needing external validation. When you are whole within yourself, you don't need others to agree with you to feel safe and okay, right? disagreement becomes a curiosity, not a threat. So, why do you believe what you believe? Well, just listen. Just listen to what they think. And if you don't agree with them, tell them, right? I mean, just tell them. And if it's too triggering, well, then, hey, maybe just walk away from that person for a bit, but revisit that conversation later when you're feeling more calm or something like that. Sometimes it's important that we don't leave these threads open and then we resent them later, but we really express ourselves to actually, share our truth and our experience in this thing. And the other person doesn't have to agree, right? But hey, that happens all the time, right? There's an agree to disagree thing, which is okay. It is okay to to have those thoughts, and have people just not think the same way as you. But you also need to reclaim your projections, right? You stop seeing your own darkness in everyone else and take responsibility for your own healing. This is how you actually change the world, by changing the one thing that you truly control, which is yourself and your internal space. You become unconditionally you. The goal is to become the person with no shadow, and that the shadow, the light, is all incorporated in you, right? You become that person who knows their shadow so intimately that it can no longer sneak up on you and run your life, because it's out in the open. It's just you. You become integrated, right? You become embodied. And you move from performing to an identity of simply being, and you don't have to perform, right? You just don't have to feel like you need to please everybody, all right? And you're just being in the complex, flawed, beautiful way that you already are, and you're finally free. In that sense, you are free. Acknowledge that, hey, you're not perfect. You've gone through things. You will continue to go through things. But do not bury those things that you don't like about yourself or you don't like about others. Get curious with them, right? So, call to action here is, what's one reoccurring trigger or pattern, that you're ready to stop running from? What might that young part of you be trying to tell you, right? Maybe journal about it. Talk with other people about it. Feel free to share that commitment in the comments below, and look inward to what that could be. So if you feel comfortable doing that, that'd be much appreciated. And ultimately, if this message resonated with you, please feel free to share this, like or subscribe. That'd mean a lot to me. And until next time, thanks for being here, and I'll see you later. Bye.